All right. So we're up to about what week 7. So um, this lecture is going to be this will be the lecture part, and then a little later I'll do a review of to prepare you for the midterm to kind of focus your studying. So anyway, we'll jump right in. Tonight we're going to be talking about different types of insurance. I don't think we're going to get into life insurance today, but we'll talk about homeowners and some health insurance issues. Um, Insurance, is a good thing once well, obviously it's a legal requirement for certain things based upon, liability. Liability means when you do something to, that causes harm. Can be physical, but typically financial harm in terms of automobiles. But anyway, that's where there's a legal requirement, exist. If you want to crash your own car, that's your business basically in terms of a legal standpoint. Um, but maybe it's not your own car since you've got a loan on it, so they'll probably force you to have insurance on it. But at a certain point, when that car's paid off, you're gonna have a decision to make. When it's an older car, and if you can't find affordable insurance, or you may just opt to go without. You can't go without liability insurance, at least not legally, but you can go without what they call collision, and collision protects you. Um, you can not have collision and just, ride off the car and walk away. And it's cheaper, but anyway, we'll look at some of those aspects. So, kind of getting ahead of myself once again. So, property insurance insures damages to your auto and home are covered. Also protects assets from liability. So, liability is, other people coming to sue you or whatever to get repayment. I crashed a car just last week, as a matter of fact, and it looks like I'm buying the state some guardrail. Whatever. I did have insurance on that car. But, it's kind of a cost of doing business in Alaska, some of the icy roads. And this particular road, I was not the first one, nor will I be the last. I think they lost several to the point where they put up signs up there, big flashing neon signs about the icy road. So anyway, um, not worth crying about. Liability, the amount that you may be required. So primary function to maintain your level of existing loss. So yeah, you can be wiped out if you don't have, you know, a certain level of liability insurance. Also, there's certain things you can do that maybe are beyond the scope of this course, but in terms of if you're going to be doing business or you're going to be doing something and have quite a bit in the way of assets, um, you're a pretty attractive target for some of the scumbag lawyers, or just, well, let's call them lawyers. But anyway, those folks they're looking for people with deep pockets. And if you have if your organization is kind of layered with different LLCs, where one LLC owns the other LLC, and the virtue of that would be that in an LLC, you're only liable for the amount that's invested within that company. So they could certainly take that company that's under the LLC, but they couldn't go after your home and some of your other assets. And so that's kind of a preventive measure because most of the time a lawyer will see that, and when this person goes to them, tries to get them to, take the case and sue this person, the lawyer will look at it and all of a sudden not be very interested in it because their fee is based upon, what's recovered, and under an LLC, they're probably going to get just a fair amount, not a huge amount. So they may not be as interested. Anyway, under the concept of insurance is this concept of risk. That's kind of the reason why we do it. So you can't avoid risk. You can mitigate it. You take steps to minimize it. But if you're going to live life, you're going to be enduring some risk. In fact, even if you stay home, you're still, going to be avoiding risk, unable to completely avoid risk. So, yeah, don't own any assets is one way, but I mean, that's just not practical. Reduce risk is really what you're after, risk management. Accepting risk. So this is where I was saying, you got a car that's worth 3 or 4 grand. Let's say the, extra amount each year for full coverage is maybe $500, and you say, you know what, um, I'm willing to you know, take a bit of a gamble here. I'll be safe. I won't do anything stupid. And every year that I go without collision, um, I keep $500. Now, if you crash the car right out of the gate, then that wasn't a good move. If you don't, then it was a good move. But anyway, that $500 figure can change wildly. Sometimes it's going to be 1,000. Sometimes it's going to be even more. And so anyway, but you're accepting risk if you do that, or you can insure against that risk. So you can take the full coverage and be covered with replacement. But I mean, are you completely covered? Number one, there's going to be a deductible. They're not going to pay the whole thing, whatever your deductible is, say 250, 500, 1,000. You're still going to be out of pocket some money. And since you filed the claim, the insurance company is going to up your rates. So they're going to get even a little bit more next time. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of decisions to be made. Um, anyway, not a big fan of this economic impact stuff because I don't think people adjust their lives that much. Types of insurance. So, yeah, we will talk about life insurance in another lecture, health insurance, casualty insurance, anyway, and obviously auto insurance. So, insurance companies, it's kind of boring work. They figure out, um, what the propensity is for what's the chance that, somebody's going to have a wreck that day. They try to insure, say, millions of folks, knowing that just a couple are going to have a wreck on any given day. And as long as that business model holds, they're doing well. They're taking in more money than they're having to pay out. But anyway, they have these things called actuarial tables where they, or in case of life insurance, mortality tables where they figure out based upon somebody's age and propensity to die, what's a good rate to charge them. So, um, so auto insurance, yep. Homeowner insurance. Medical insurance is sort of a blend of insurance and not. I mean, there we get into things like pre-existing conditions, which makes health insurance not the same as the rest. You know, you can't insure a car that's got a big dent in it. Um, it's they're not going to replace an existing dent, nor can you go to the insurance company and say, yeah, I want to insure my home, and they'll say, okay, well, we need to come by and inspect. And you say, oh, no, no, it's already burned down. I'm just trying to get some insurance now. So I'm not trying to be, callous here, but some of the pre-existing conditions, that's why you definitely need to guard your medical information. But if they find out, you have a few issues, you're essentially, it's a different thing. So medical insurance a lot of times falls more into a different situation where it shouldn't really be called an insurance. To call it insurance makes it difficult because it's uh, it's more of a societal good, something that should fall under a welfare program than an actual insurance program because it's kind of difficult to make money in those cases. Also, when it does come under those programs, there's not a lot of incentive for cost control, which you can see, which makes the medical situation such a mess as it is now. Disability insurance, long-term care insurance, different types of insurance. Long-term care is like a nursing home. So hopefully nobody will end up in a nursing home. Obviously, with COVID, people have taken kind of a closer look at nursing homes. I mean, the fact that within 6 months, um, people go in a nursing home, 50% of them end up dying. That's on a non-COVID year and any year. So if you go into a nursing home, things aren't going well for you in life, and hopefully you'll survive. But statistically, you got a 50% chance of not making it more than 6 months. So, anyway, disability insurance. This is, let's say you're a roofer, you fall off the house, and now you can't work. So different kinds of insurance you can get for that. Some will cover you and pay you, say, like 80%. But they may only pay that 80% if you can't do any work. They'll say, well, Yeah, you're kind of busted up, but you can still sit at a desk and do some other type of job. Or other types of insurance say, oh, you can't work in your chosen profession. So obviously the one that, guarantees that, um, that chosen profession, that's going to be a bit more expensive. And then life insurance. Um, and that's a whole different subject, but it is actually pretty easy, but I'm not going to go into it on this page. Okay, insurance agents and brokers. Most of us just, are going to be dealing with the internet. In fact, I find the insurance agents just, I just way too much interaction back and forth. I've had insurance on homes, and you know, it's just something you do, online or over the phone, and you never speak to anybody. Having a local agent, I've had these folks wanting to come out. Okay, we want to come out and we want to look at the home. We want to do this. We want to do that. It's like they're spending so much time and so much effort for, you got a lot of things going on in life, and I don't need a relationship with my broker. I just wanted to be there when I call and I've got a problem. But other than that, don't need to hear from them. Don't need Christmas cards. Don't need any of that. Auto insurance. So, like I say, legal requirement to drive. I mean, obviously, lots of people don't. Lots of people will break the law, and that's why you need insurance that will also protect you from uninsured motorists, which most policies do. So the personal injury lawyers. I know a few of these folks, and they're the first to admit it. I mean, a couple guys I've worked on some real estate transactions with them, and they're so happy to be working on stuff like that. They say, yeah, it doesn't pay like the personal injury stuff, but it's not as whatever. They they have to do what they you know, what they have to do. They represent their client, and even if it's in some, I don't know if it'd be unethical, but there's some situations they get themselves into and just you know take people. Um, Auto insurance provisions. So contract between you, just like any insurance policy, between the company and the policyholder. Specified coverage for an individual in a vehicle. Yep. So there's a property component, and that individual is more the medical component. Um, Bodily injury. So yep. And then the property damage. So, and again, depending on how you have that claim, it can just, or how you have that policy, it can be strictly just liability, or it can also be to cover your own uh, car. Now, your own car, I mean, assuming you're not at fault, the other person's insurance should cover um, the thing. But anymore, I mean, insurance companies, they, regardless of whether you're at fault or not, they, if you're involved in an accident, they consider you weren't driving defensively enough. And so, you don't typically walk away from any kind of accident without some sort of negative effect on your insurance. The insurance, they'll quote these three numbers in succession, you know, and the first part's personal injury, everybody combined, and then property damage. And you'll look at these numbers going, wow, those are the minimums, and they really are minimums. So let's say you wreck a car or two and you're responsible, you're going to go right through that 50 grand, and then you're going to be on the hook for the rest. So that's typically where you want to look at those numbers and make sure that they make sense and that you haven't gone with just strictly the state minimum. B is for the medical. So you can look at some of these, and it really doesn't make much rhyme or reason. I mean, California would think they'd be completely lawsuit happy, but only $5,000 for property and 15,000 for. I mean, you can't hardly. Very few cars that combined will not exceed those amounts. And so, and then uninsured motorists. So it happens a lot, you know. Been in accidents with people like this, and they don't even get a ticket sometimes. It's kind of frustrating. And then collision. These are some of the optional items, you know. Um, Collision is the part, you know, when you're at fault. So, like if it's a single car accident, yeah, it's you're the only one responsible, regardless of whether it was an ice or a moose or whatever. Um, you're not covered unless you have collision. And then comprehensive is everything else. Sometimes, depending on the situation, if the car's in the garage, it might be covered under homeowner insurance, but sometimes not. And then the deductible. So I've gone with $1,000 deductibles, even when I had collision. So I take full coverage, but I'll have a super high deductible. And the insurance companies will lower the rate quite a bit because they know you're not going to be messing with them, for little stuff. And actually, one of the times I don't recommend that many cars, but anyway, another car that got wrecked was I had $1,000 deductible. When I called up, the lady said, "You really didn't want $1,000 deductible, do you?" And I said, "Well, that's what I did." And she goes, "Well, let's just adjust that." And so, yeah, that was a one-time good deal. I don't know that that would ever happen again, but um, so other provisions available for additional premium. So some stuff, if it's cheap, like roadside assistance, it's kind of nice to have. Rental car, if you're involved in a wreck, sometimes that's something extra. But this is kind of personalized, with me doing primarily local driving, you know, if something breaks, just park it and call an Uber, go home and get one of the other vehicles, drive a farm truck around for a few days. So I'm not going to pay extra for some of those items. It depends on your situation. If you only got one vehicle, that might be a good deal. Or if you're on the road a lot, far away places, that roadside assistance might be well worth it. So anyway, just kind of a summary. So anyway, some things you can't avoid. If it says liability, um, that's going to be a legal necessity. But the amount of whether you have collision or not, and also the characteristics of your comprehensive coverage, those will vary as well. What influences that? Yeah, some of the value of the car, but also the repairability. Some cars are just more expensive to repair. And then, yeah, well, the other thing too, if it's a sports car versus a, whatever, they know which kind of vehicles get in more accidents. And obviously, if you're involved in a car that's stolen a lot and gets in a lot of accidents, yeah, your insurance could be higher. And then your age, your mileage. And now it's kind of creepy. They're willing to lower your mileage if you'll give them access to some sort of device that allows them to monitor your driving. You can get some of these devices that are essentially like a GPS, and they can tell if you're, typically speeding. They can tell how many miles you went, and then maybe they share that data with somebody else. Who knows? I don't want any part of it. Your location. So you got to think that in Alaska, just because of the driving conditions, sometimes that can be a little rougher. Your driver's training, well, especially if you're a young driver. School performs again for young drivers. So, yep, it's a competitive world out there, and there is a huge difference, you know. And some of the ones that you think that advertise a lot, well, that advertising costs money too, and it's not necessarily spread out amongst all the customers. I've never, you know, the you probably know the company I'm talking about that advertises incessantly. I've never seen their rates be anywhere near competitive. So, there's some different things about where they are. It also has to do with the state too. California, obviously, some of the personal injury stuff, just the lawyers themselves. New York, um, some things are going to drive those costs up. Homeowners insurance. So typically, homeowners insurance. It's not that expensive. We're talking about, oh, I don't know. It doesn't seem that much. Maybe $100 a month. Um, and usually, if you've got a mortgage, it's going to be, you don't have much wiggle room. You can choose your provider, but there's a necessity to have the insurance. Fire, burglary. Yep. There's also different things. I mean, different insurance you can get. The one insurance that you cannot get from a private provider is flood insurance. Flood insurance is a unique thing. It's got to be offered by the federal government because the problem with flood insurance is, let's say some commercial company offered it, they would take everybody's money, month after month, year after year. And then when the big flood comes, it hits everybody at once. And no insurance company has got the resources to cover everybody having something bad happen to them at the same time. So they go broke and they don't pay anybody off and they, go away and close up that company. Well, that's not really fair to the people who pay the insurance. So they don't allow private companies to sell flood insurance just because it doesn't fit into that insurance model. The insurance model is based upon, you know, a few people having a bad day, but not everybody having a bad day at the same time. Perils, yep, fire, falling objects. Renter's insurance a lot of times will be required now, um, but it'll typically be a contingent in your mortgage where you must have that insurance. You got to be careful with these guys too. They're kind of scammers. They came to me and they said, "Oh, you're underinsured. Your house is worth, say, I don't know what it was, 400,000 or something. You only have $285,000 worth of insurance." Well, the land is not going to burn. Whatever the land is worth does not need to be insured. All that needs to be insured is the structure. So anyway, they'll I've had a couple different insurance companies come to me and try and get me to get more insurance because I don't have enough coverage when they know full well I have all the coverage I need. So anyway, this cash value versus replacement cost. Obviously, this is something that you want to have replacement cost. So what's going to happen is if, let's say, there's some sort of minor fire, and a lot of times it's not so much the fire, because they're generally pretty good at putting those things out, but the smoke and the water damage from the fire and also the trying to get the fire out, will basically ruin your clothes, ruin your furniture, ruin this, ruin that. And if you just have if you have replacement costs, you're good. But if you have the cash value, now they're saying, well, yeah, that TV may cost, $800, but it's a couple years old. It's at the end of its life, and it's depreciated. We're saying it's worth 200. Maybe that's truly what it's worth if you went to someone on Craigslist or something, but you're going to have to replace it. So to get your life back, and this is even more so with the clothes and stuff, they can depreciate all that stuff. So replacement value is obviously a nice thing because your house just burned down. You got enough going on rather than trying to re-enter life with just a fraction of the stuff you used to have. Other structures, property may be covered. Yep, sometimes outbuildings. Again, I go round and round with these guys because I've got one building that's sketchy as all whatever. So I put a property line. I split up the property in different sections. I put a property line to exclude that property. So no mortgage company, no building inspector, nobody ever looks at it because I don't want them to. I mean, it's a crappy structure. And but like I say, this current insurance company, they always they get pretty sneaky and they look at the satellite map and they say, oh, there's another structure on there and you need to get that insured. And it's like, okay, look at the property line. It's not in there. So kind of an unusual case, but anyway, typically outbuildings, if they're on the property, will be insured and they may want to come look at that personal property. So this is kind of a gotcha thing. If let's say you're really into photography or jewelry or whatever, guns, and you got a whole bunch of a certain item, and you think, oh, I'm great, I'm all insured. You may not be. Usually there's a cap on items, And so they'll say, yeah, you're insured for whatever your jewelry up to $1,200 in any one category. And let's say you got 10,000 worth of photography stuff, and they're saying nope, you're only covered for the first $1,200 worth of that. If you do have any stuff, first look at the policy, fairly closely, and if you have anything in one category, um, you want to itemize it and get a separate policy for that. So they call that a rider or a floater, personal property floater, or something like that to ensure single items or groups of items of high value. Otherwise, you're going to be screwed. There's probably an exception in there where they won't pay. So, home inventory, yep. A list of what you had is always useful, and that's where something like a video or photography, whatever, photos of your stuff will help jog your memory if the whole thing's burned down. So they're talking about the personal property floater, home office, if you're claiming that. Liability, somebody comes to your house and they trip on something. Now, where liability can get worse. You can be considered negligent if just were basically stupid about it. So let's say you've got a swimming pool. Probably not very common in Alaska, but let's say you got a swimming pool and no fence. Or you've got, all these lawn tools out there just, hanging around, or just dangerous situations that you know about, and some person coming on your property can find a way to hurt themselves with it. If you didn't take proper care, you can be found negligent, which is going to make any sort of liability claim much worse. So, anyway, other types of provisions, additional living provisions, loss of use provisions. So, yeah. So, I go through this stuff a lot. Being a farmer, I'm having to change things up a bit based upon, trying to control risk and liability. Anyway, factors that affect homeowners insurance premiums: value of the home, deductible, location, degree of protection, and discounts. So those last three, the location, degree of protection, I mean, there's some variables in there. They'll ask you these questions, and kind of be careful how you answer them. Do you have smoke alarms? The answer better be yes. Or you need to get to the store and buy some smoke alarms and put them in there so you can answer yes. You can't really change your distance to the fire station, but they may ask about that. They may want to know about the roof, a wood stove. When they're asking seemingly interesting or innocent questions, they may be trying to decide whether you have any, what they would consider dangerous kind of hobbies or dangerous things going on in the house that may typically lend that thing to being burnt down, or no alarms or something like that. That's what they're looking for. So go figure, Tornado Alley there, Oklahoma. Florida gets a lot of weather. Idaho, not so much. So it's pretty easy to tell, what sort of natural disasters prevail in terms of home insurance. Okay, yep. Use one insure for. You can do that. They want to give you an auto and home discount, but I found that I didn't like the company, and now I was screwed in two counts because I had to switch all my auto insurance and my home insurance. So, renter's insurance. So, yeah, just covers the personal possessions within, since you don't own the structure. In a condo, you own everything from the paint in. So, again, you don't own the structure, but you own the contents. But a lot of times, landlords are requiring renter's insurance for liability issues. Umbrella. So sometimes if you're just at risk of being sued by kind of anybody, if you've got a fair amount of assets, you may want a general liability plan. So that's kind of it. Um, there's quite a few variables to it, but things have gotten easier again with the internet being able to shop, and it's personal preference. Like I say, I don't even care. I got plenty of friends. I don't need to meet anybody new. Having a relationship with my insurance agent is almost not desired. So if you're somebody who wants to reach out and touch them, you know, whatever, feel free. But I don't want to go in their office. I just want to fill it out, set up the auto payments, and not speak to them again unless there's a claim to be filed. Now, health insurance, I'm not trying to be vague here, but health insurance is a mess. We all know it's a mess. Politically, it's like anything else. They may not necessarily want to find a solution since it's such a good political thing. If they were to solve this problem, then they wouldn't have a problem to campaign on. And there's zero cost control. Things are out of control. Typically you have insurance to prevent a catastrophe. With some of these premiums, um, the you know policy itself is the catastrophe. You're trying to prevent unaffordable expenses, and sometimes the policy itself is the unaffordable expense. The good news is most people get it through their employer. So here's kind of a breakdown. You can see nearly half have some sort of employer health care. I guess those numbers may be dropping a little bit, but if it's available, it's typically the best deal because it's spread over a large number of people. Not typically a lot of different physicals and other things required. Medicare, so Medicare would be the older folks, and so look at that government kind of program. Medicaid, this is down in the welfare section, so people who are below some of the like Obamacare type stuff. Medicaid CHIP, so those are the children under some of the welfare programs. The Affordable Care Act, so call it what you want, Obamacare or whatever, that's only about 10% of the people. A lot of people who apply for Obamacare or Affordable Care Act, the payments are too high or their income's not high enough and they slip down into Medicaid and then uninsured. They make it look like that's a bad number. Um, I would put like there's some people that are uninsured because they can't afford it, and I'd say maybe half that number are those people, but the other half are friggin' wealthy guys who are like, screw it, health insurance is expensive, it's not a good deal, and they'll pay cash for items. They'll just go to the hospital and if you are a cash buyer at a hospital, the rates are maybe 50%, maybe a quarter, because they don't have to deal with the billing. They're going to get every bit of it. Whereas if they try and bill back through Medicaid or, TRICARE and those federal programs, if the delays are and the billing, they may not pay 100%. So anyway, um, they're trying to show that it's, this dramatically high number of people who can't get it. And I know especially in your age group, assuming people are younger students, um, but anyway, there's a lot that goes into it too. What is ideal for most young folks is some sort of catastrophic care coverage. Whereas if you get very sick with some super expensive disease, you're covered. But for smaller stuff, you might just pay out of pocket. But that's no longer an option with the introduction of the Affordable Care Act. Everything had to meet a minimum standard, and sometimes that minimum is anyway, it was meant for the Affordable Care Act people to subsidize some of the other people within that pool. So anyway, health insurance can get real political real quick, but it's a mess, and hopefully something will get resolved. But like I said, I'm not optimistic. Um, Leading cause of bankruptcy and the rest of it, it's just exorbitantly expensive. 1 in 5 workers. Yep, yep. So we get in that pre-existing conditions that I'm not going to go there again, but it makes healthcare a unique situation. So pregnancy can be quite expensive. Dental insurance, vision insurance, these are more in the private area. And so there's competitive forces at work. So they actually end up being pretty reasonable for the most part. You can get, especially vision insurance, for not much. And dental insurance is fairly inexpensive, um, as opposed to just going to into the dentist's office. But like vision insurance, the value for like laser eye surgery, that's a pretty outstanding um, value, based upon the proficiency required of the doctor, the equipment involved. But just because it's, a free market and there's competition out there, there is some downward pressure on costs, and so it's made it uh, fairly reasonable. So again, the deductible, the co-insurance, stop loss provisions, coordination of benefits. So a lot of details that will change the price of any given policy. So other items not covered. So they have some medical savings account and some other items out there. Um, I've never gone that route, but I've been fortunate because I've always had employer sponsored healthcare. And again, maybe for the next generation, that may not be the case, but that will probably be one of the last benefits for companies to do away with. So we talked about Medicare for older folks, age 65 and over, Medigap. You've seen the commercials for that, where people don't want to pay any premium, any whatever, so they pay it in advance. They don't want to have to pay any deductible. Medicare, yep, Prescription Act, Medicaid, so aged, blind, disabled, and needy families with children. State by state is the states administer. Affordable Care Act, remains a contentious political issue, and that's 11 years now. Long-term care, again, nursing home, assisted living home, premium is quite expensive because the care is quite expensive. My strategy with that is to keep a little bit more money in, you know, the nest egg, the retirement, and I think, I've lived overseas a number of places. I'd go abroad in a heartbeat and enjoy life in a nice tropical environment rather than, if you're going to be inside and not able to enjoy yourself, there's not much point staying in Alaska. But typically, if you're interested in this, the earlier you commit to it, the cheaper it's going to be. The closer you get to retirement age, it will likely become unaffordable. But it basically, insure you so your nursing home care, if you are in a nursing home and you continue to survive in there for, a decade or so, it could make a huge difference. Really into long-term care. Yep. Consider your family's health history. Well, guess what? The insurance company is definitely going to consider that when they're writing your policy and figuring out how much to charge you. So disability insurance, and this is what I was talking about between own occupation and any occupation. You fall off the roof, you're banged up, maybe you're, in a wheelchair, you're no longer going to be a roofer, but they're like, yeah, we're not paying because you can still work in an office environment. So um, maybe that's not what you thought you'd sign up for. So it's not just your own disability insurance. And, often when you hurt yourself, you've got to go to the doctor or whatever, and your employer is asking, did it happen on the job or was it on your personal time? Obviously, be honest on this, but yeah, if it happened close to the job, um, you want to have an employer because it's a different set of insurance that takes place, workman's compensation and the rest of it that kicks in, as opposed to out snowboarding, nail into a tree. It's kind of tough to a lot of these different insurance. Workman's comp won't apply, employer's disability won't apply. So percentage of your income. The notion with most of these disability type things is that it's not going to be as expensive if you're, 80% of your salary is basically where you're considered even. Because if they gave you 100%, you're paid as if you still have to maintain a car to go to work, and you still have to, perhaps get meals, at work, and there's some inherent expenses about being employed. So waiting periods, probationary periods. Yep. A lot of times you'll see that in insurance things where, again, people will try and put one over and they've already got an issue and then they go and try and get insurance for it. They're kind of wise to that, so they'll normally have 6 months or something like that before the benefits kick in. Again, typically offered. Mine was offered through the employer, and I opted not to do it. Okay, so that's it on insurance. This section is kind of short. Part of it is just because the medical thing. I mean, I wish I had better news about this, but it's a complete mess. This may influence who you go to work for. You know, there's some benefits you want, and definitely medical benefits, health insurance benefits. If that's your situation, that could be a you know a primary reason to go to work for a company. But let's say you're somebody who's maybe retired military, or let's say you've got a spouse who's got better benefits than you, then um, you may want to skip it. I will tell you that one thing you don't want, because I decline the insurance that's offered by the company I work for, even though it's pretty good coverage, because I have existing coverage by being a military retiree. Um, Now you have two insurance companies, and oh my God, neither one wants to pay. They want the other one to pay, and all they do is squabble and argue back and forth. And the minute you have two insurance companies involved, it's not double the problem; it's 10 times the problem. I had an ankle worked on, and I mean there was like 54 pieces of mail that were generated between anyway, and then they're trying to send me to collection because they both refuse to pay, and the doctor wants to get paid. So be careful with that. And again, talk to your insurance representative. But um, my strategy is just one insurance company because, and in this case, I had to default to the military one. I paid a little extra to get better coverage, but two insurance companies is just too much. So anyway, I will put out another lecture about the midterm. So this midterm is not proctored, so don't worry about doing any RP Now stuff or e-learning or any of that. You're going to do it on Blackboard. It will be time limited, and there's 40 questions. So yeah, if you think, oh, I can just skip study and I'm just going to reference the book, you're going to run out of time. The test is going to lock out on you. It is multiple choice, so if you know the stuff, you can go through it pretty quick. You're definitely going to want to watch the review video and calculator permitted. But again, it's not math intensive. You're not going to have to, you know, memorize formulas or any of that. So I'll talk more about that in the actual review.